Hello and welcome to episode 78 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today is February 12th, 2018. I am Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both of McFlugel.com. Show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/78. I'm going to hand it over to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our topic for this episode.
Thanks, Rollo, and thanks everyone for listening to the Rollo and Slappy Show. Right now, we're in the middle of winter, and it happens every 4 years. The Winter Olympics are going on. It's the one time of, I guess, every 4 years, I have the opportunity to watch curling and the biathlon and whatever else, figure skating. We talked about on the last couple episodes that we're both sports fans. I like the Olympics. I think they're fun to watch. If you're thinking about the nationalism that goes into it, we've had episodes on that too, and the dangers of nationalism. But I like the competitiveness. I like watching games I don't get to watch very often. And there's usually some decent storylines. But of course, as always, the media tries to invent storylines. They try to make things bigger than they are or find meaning in things that have no meaning. And this week, or the last couple days anyway, the big news has been with North Korea since the Winter Games are in South Korea. There was a women's hockey team kind of combined with the North and the South for one team, a unified team. And there was a lot of news about Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong. Did I get it right?
I think so. I don't speak Korean, but I think you
Kim
got it.
Yo-jong was at the game, and Mike Pence was there, and the media in the United States is just fawning all over her and saying how great she is. So, Rollo, what do you think of the situation and how the media is portraying it, and calling this woman just the darling of the Olympics right now, the Ivanka Trump of Korea?
So this is where the media has set the bar for treating someone like a rock star or like the greatest person in the world, is that if you are nearby someone associated with Trump, if you literally just exist and do not do anything else, then you are like the greatest person in the world to them. And they will, ooh and ah over you and treat you like you're the greatest thing in the world, no matter what else you've ever done in your life. Because that's what happened. They were just Kim Yo-jong and Mike Pence were sitting near each other. Was it the hockey game? And they just ignored each other. Didn't shake hands, didn't acknowledge each other, whatever. And so she's now like the greatest person in the world to them, which just, it blows my, not that I think that you should necessarily go and ooh and ah over politicians, because I think they're, not good people 99.99% of the time. But I mean, it's just over the top with, like I said, how low the bar is set. And then you couple that with, she's not a good person. She's part of the North Korean regime that throws people into concentration camps and murders people. It's like I don't know how people can just compartmentalize that and just ignore that part of it. It's absurd.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Kim Jong-un has killed his uncle and his half-brother and several other people who were high up in the government, and she's still around and still working with them. I have a feeling she knows exactly what they're doing and is part of it, and probably has done some really awful things.
Exactly. And so, as a result of this, all right, so some of the media is flipping out and over this, and so you have a backlash. So I'm going to read a couple tweets because I think this is a good microcosm for the state of conversation and logic that we're in today. So Jake Tapper tweeted out, "If you hate U.S. leaders more than you hate the Kim Jong-un regime, then you really need to read up on North Korea." Okay. So we were talking about this before the episode started.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care about which government's worse than the other. I think they're both evil. I think they're both evil in different ways. If you want to talk about imperialism and killing foreigners,
setting up military bases in 130 nations or whatever the count's up to now,
then the U.S. is clearly worse. But if you want to talk about how they treat their own people, the U.S. obviously has its problems. I mean, look at the war on drugs and the police brutality and all these other issues.
Just the prison population alone should tell you something.
Right. But it is not even remotely in the same ballpark compared to how North Korea treats its citizens. So in that sense, North Korea is a lot worse. Both are evil. Both governments are evil. You can say that both governments are evil. You can call one evil without that implying that you're defending another. So that was Jake Tapper's tweet. I'll read it again. If you hate U.S. leaders more than you hate the Kim Jong-un regime, you really need to read up on North Korea. Okay, he's not a libertarian or an anarchist, so I get that he's going to ignore a lot of the atrocities that the U.S. government that libertarians see. So Abby Martin replied, North Korea didn't drop nukes, invade and pillage other countries, carry out coups, start drone wars, kill millions of people around the world, or sponsor international terrorism. When is the last time any CNN anchor talked about why the world considers the U.S. the greatest threat? She's correct in what she said, but that's not really a good response to what Tapper was saying. Or at least, you're talking. I'm making motions with my hands because I can't figure out the words I'm trying to put together. You're talking past each other right here.
Right.
I mean, I think Tapper said something that it's worth a rebuttal to, but it's I don't know. I mean, and her tweet isn't even
a rebuttal, but just adding on to be like, hey man, the U.S. isn't like the greatest government in the world either.
Right. And maybe I'm misinterpreting what she's saying. It's Twitter after all. You have a certain amount that you can say, and it would be unfair to act like that she said that North Korea is a good place based on that. But that's not even the person I was most interested in talking about, because someone else replied to that tweet, and it was Steven Crowder. And he wrote, "Which countries have we pillaged? Also, when have we ever performed violent, forced abortions on political dissidents in internment camps? Your moral equivalency is beyond idiotic."
So Steven Crowder doesn't watch the news.
Right. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. And this is the kind of conversation that is just absurd and ridiculously partisan, is that people can't say one government's evil without it implying that the other one is good, or assuming that's what's going on. And if I made the mistake of doing that to Abby Martin, then I'm, shame on me. I'm criticizing people, but
yeah, I don't want to take it off topic, but you see this with so many things, especially with foreign policy. If you criticize any of the wars in the Middle East, oh, so you side with the terrorists? Right. Or you criticize Israel, oh, so you think Hamas is great or Hezbollah is wonderful? Same thing we get this fairly often, and you criticize Donald Trump, people think you're a Democrat. You criticize Barack Obama, they think you voted for Trump.
Exactly. And so it's like,
I blame the schools.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, it's critical thinking.
No one knows how to think. I mean, you hear one thing and you lose your mind. There's no critical thinking at all. Right.
But I mean, I shouldn't have been so critical of Abby Martin's tweet, because that's what I forgot about the Steven Crowder one. Because hers wasn't, I don't know. It's like I said, they're probably talking past each other. It's Twitter is terrible for these types of things, and for the people talking back and forth. I mean, But at least Abby Martin didn't say anything that just flat out wasn't true.
Right.
Steven Crowder, which countries have we pillaged? Like most of the Middle East. Also, I mean, Japan.
North Africa.
They dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. That's kind of a bad, really, really bad thing. And it's like, it's this constant, like, just, you got to one-up the other side. Oh, when have we ever performed violent forced abortions on political dissidents in internment camps? Okay, that's pretty terrible that North Korea did that.
Well, we have Guantanamo Bay. I mean, some pretty awful things went on there.
Right. There was concentration camps for Japanese Americans in World War II. I mean, there's bad stuff in the U.S., but it's like, it just blows my mind that you just can't, you just have to be on like this defensive like that. It's so stupid. Instead of just being like, hey, I don't know. I guess it's just got to be partisan bickering. You can't let someone from the other side have anything. You've got to go back and jump down their throat and just prove that they're wrong for whatever reason. Even when, well, he ignored. I mean, he only asked which countries have we pillaged, because Abby Martin asked or talked about dropping nukes, invading other countries, carrying out coups, starting drone wars, killing millions of people around the world, and sponsoring international terrorism. So I don't know. Maybe Steven Crowder is acknowledging, yeah, all those things are true, but we didn't pillage anybody.
Right.
And those North Koreans are pretty bad, so that makes us not bad. I mean, I'm staring at the tweet right now, and I see his picture, and it's him standing there with an American flag behind him. He's like has his fists up or something. I don't know, but it's just disgusting nationalism, and it's frustrating. This is why we can't have nice things. This is why you can't. And I was having discussions. I was talking on Twitter with and at people, and I watched other conversations where it's the same thing happen. You criticize North Korea, and someone comes back and says, "Oh, what about the United States?" And you're like, "Well, they do bad things too." And then you have someone say, "Oh, you're going to criticize the United States? Look at North Korea." Well, yeah, like I said, I don't understand how you can't just say both governments do evil things.
And I don't even care if you say one's worse than the other. If that's what you think, fine. But
right.
To say that like North Korea or North Korea is bad, therefore the U.S. is great, or if you point out that the United States does a lot of bad things and that somehow implies that you like North Korea, I mean, it just makes no sense.
It's absurd. And you know what the real tragedy of this is that you had an opportunity for maybe some goodwill to happen, maybe for a little bit of conversation. I know it's through the Olympics and with government, and the governments are so heavily involved, but you had an opportunity for people from North Korea to experience the world outside, and not that they're even aware of any of this stupidity going on, but just even for the sake of Americans to be like, hey, it's really terrible what those North Koreans have to go through. Maybe develop some sympathy or empathy for them out of this. But no, it's just turned into just, rah, rah, America, and, screw them, they're terrible.
Yeah, and on the flip side, I mean, I watched a little bit of it, and they're just constantly talking about North Korea and how great it is that they came together. And Raul and I were talking before, and yeah, I mean, that is a good thing. Of course, North Korea sees the country as unified. Like, they think it's one country, it's one Korea. Or maybe they think that, or they say that, and they just see the South as being occupied. So they think, or at least their propaganda, their official line is that it's one Korea anyway. But But all these North Korean athletes who are in the South, and we could talk about how great it is, because, you know, it is, like we said, it is good. But those athletes are being watched 24 hours a day. They've been threatened. If they try to defect or try to escape, there's 3 generations going to prison camps in North Korea. So before we start gushing all over this Kim Yo Jong, let's remember what they do.
Exactly.
And call for what it is. And we don't, and just because I say that doesn't mean I think everything the U.S. does. Of course, we don't want war. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, but that's one great thing about sports is when you're competing, you kind of forget about all this. And it would be, I think, a positive thing if the North and South Koreans get along and become friends somehow. I'm sure the North Koreans will disappear after this back into the, what do they call it, the Hermit Kingdom or something, back into North Korea, and we'll have no contact with the outside world. But at least they get to be seen as human beings, possibly.
Well, at least those few people get a taste of it.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. And then they can go home and talk to their family, and they can tell people, and they can, you know, who knows? Maybe one day they'll start ignoring their government.
Yeah.
Which I understand, or I hear they're starting to. There's a lot of black markets popping up. And Kim Jong-un knows about it, but doesn't want to stop it because they can't feed their people. So he'll let it go.
It's the same thing that happened in like the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. They have to, or else they understand. Some of the political leaders, they just understand that this is the way that people's needs are going to get served. So they have to turn a blind eye to it, or else their country and economy will come to a screeching halt. More so than, you know, it's barely inching along, but that would be the absolute death knell.
Yeah, like Michael Malice talks about North Korea all the time. He wrote a book on North Korea, which is very good, by the way. The unauthorized autobiography of Kim Jong-il gives you a good insight into what it's like in North Korea. He's been there. But he always calls the people of North Korea hostages. And you could really see that. I was watching a couple weeks ago on National Geographic. There was a documentary that Lisa Ling went into North Korea with a doctor who was doing cataract surgery because there's no they can't do that in North Korea. So they bring in this doctor. He did something like 1,000 surgeries in a very short period of time. I forget the number of days he was there. So they were restricted on where they could go and where they could have their cameras. And but what really struck me, and I mean, if you don't think they're hostages, watch that documentary. I'm sure it's on demand somewhere. But when they take their eye patch off after the surgery and they can finally see, I mean, these people were blind or legally blind. The first thing they do is thank their dear leader. They don't even say, like, oh, my God, I can see. They immediately thank Kim Jong-un. It's really sick. And they have to do that because there's a camera there. I mean, maybe they have to do that anyway. But it's just a terrible situation over there. And so I find, personally, I mean, I just think it's disgusting that anyone would talk about these leaders as being so wonderful. I think it's a good opportunity to really show, hopefully, what North Korea really is. And, I don't know what the right solution there is, but I know it's not dropping bombs and killing the hostages.
I agree. So...
well, I have another. I'm going to throw this on you. We didn't talk about this before. I was texting you a little bit about it earlier today, but we didn't talk about it before the show. So I'm going to throw it at you and see what you would respond. I listened to Thaddeus Russell's podcast, which is very thought-provoking. Some things he says I just either don't understand or just disagree with. But one of them is he talks about having an objective truth. And listening to this podcast, you've heard us say things like, the U.S. government does things that are bad, and the North Korean government does things that are bad. Well, by saying things are bad, that's implying an objective truth and that there is something that's good. And so Thaddeus Russell considers himself a postmodernist, likes the French postmodern thinkers, and I'm going to try to do his argument justice and be fair with it, although he knows the argument much better than I do, obviously, so recommend listening to him to hear it. But if there is an objective truth, then you are obligated or it's your duty to uphold that truth. Do you agree with that? I mean, you're saying, and I'm saying, that North Korea is bad. Does that obligate the United States or you to go over there and save those people? Because what Thaddeus Russell will argue is that is the reason for war a lot of times is those guys are bad, we have to stop it.
Well, I think that's the cover up for a lot of reason why wars are fought. It's the excuse to make
sure,
people...
but it's sold and bought. It's bought.
Sure.
You know, people believe that.
So no, I don't agree with that conclusion. First of all, I don't agree that the state should be doing it because they would be doing it through, theft in order to fund it. But even just to say, all right, well, as individuals, should you go over there? I don't think it makes sense to try to intervene, especially violently, when you've got absolutely no shot at success. If I went over to North Korea and tried to liberate those people, I would immediately be killed. And I don't think that's very helpful at all. I think I'm much better off doing what we do, which is spreading the message of libertarianism and of liberty and freedom and peace and non-coercion, non-aggression, to change minds in order to change the world that way. It's a much longer term, slower solution, but it doesn't. It literally would not have any effect unless I became some sort of martyr that caused something else. But even if it, let's say the state did go to war and you're just going to kill massive amounts of civilians. So does that help them? Because, all right,
does that solve the problem?
Yeah, the North Korean government's really acting really terrible to their people. So the U.S. goes over there and just kills their civilians, whether or not they mean to or not. It's the fact. It's the fact of war. And it's happened basically in every war that's ever happened, is that there's collateral damage. So, unless fighting, violence should be absolute last resort. And you should really only do it when you've got some sort of good that's going to come out over not fighting.
Right. There should be some kind of... If you're ever going to use violence, it should have a chance of a positive end or a significant chance.
I think you've got to be really, really sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if someone's breaking in and attacking someone, yeah, you can use physical violence against that person to stop it. But is it okay to, like a week later when the guy's walking down the street, go punch him in the head? It seems, maybe, I don't want to go off the rails, but if you're going to use violence, it's got to have a chance at being effective. And if you see what we've done in the Middle East, it's hard to say that this is being effective. If you see what they did in Vietnam, 50 years later, I guess Vietnam's okay, doing better, but it took a long time. And a lot of lives were destroyed to do that. I don't see how, because it might be acceptable or morally okay to go over there and try to stop the North Korean government. If it's completely ineffective and you kill innocent people, I don't see how that's a positive outcome.
No, it's not at all.
And so this is another thing we hit on the past episode is we do this because we like it, we enjoy it, and we're hoping to change some minds. So in a sense, we're somewhat doing that duty that Thaddeus Russell talks about. We could sit quiet and not do anything and just kind of go through life, but we care about this stuff and we're trying to spread the message and hopefully convince a lot of other people, and maybe we can end sanctions and actually trade. And so those people in North Korea, if their government would let it happen, have some of these material goods that we have that make our life so much easier. And that's one good way to get rid of government, is to keep trading.
Yep. Oh, I agree. And I really think that to add on to that, the only time you'd ever be justified in using violence as a response, as a general response, as if someone messes with your tractor. So
That's it. That's the only time.
no, that a violent response would always be justified.
So if Kim Jong Un stole your tractor, then you'd be in favor of going to war with North Korea.
Yes.
Got it. That's what I thought you were saying. I just wanted to clarify for everyone listening.
Yes. So with that, do you have a free market success story you'd like to share?
I can kind of make one up here. Do you have one?
No, I liked your idea that we were talking about before the show.
Yeah, okay.
And,
so I got to...
And it's not made up. This is... Unless you're making it up.
Making up the idea of using it as a free market success story. I'm not making it up. This is a true story. You get a little insight into the life of Slappy Jones. On Saturday, a couple days ago, I met up with my brother, and then my sister-in-law, my wife, and our kids, and we all went bowling. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Little kids got to go bowling. What's great about it is my oldest son is 3 years old, and I have a 2-year-old, and also have a 1-year-old, but she didn't do any bowling. But my 2 and 3-year-old would have a real tough time getting that bowling ball down to the pins and knocking anything down. The bowling alley realizes this and put in these little chutes, and they're kind of shaped like a dragon or something, and the ball rolls down the dragon's neck and down the lane and knocks the pins down. The kids love it. They think it's awesome. And, of course, they set up bumpers, too. So how is that a free market success? Well, there's no reason for them to do that other than to attract business. They want families to come. They want young kids to come, learn the game. One, I'm sure if you own a bowling alley, you probably have a little bit of interest in bowling and having the game continue. And that's one way to get kids interested in your passion, is to have them do it at a young age. And this allows them to go there and do it, no matter how old they are. You prop the ball up on the top of the chute, and a 2-year-old can push it off and watch it roll down and hit the pins. And it was a great time. It's really not expensive either, so that was fun. And then afterwards, it was raining on Saturday, by the way. So me and my brother are standing in the parking lot trying to figure out where we're going to go get dinner. And there was about 15 options that came up, more or less, off the top of our heads, thinking about spots to go. And one, that's kind of a miracle in itself. There was that many places to eat right where we were within, a couple mile radius. And we decided on a diner. Why? Because it's informal. We had young kids. They're probably going to be loud, which they were. And it's a big menu. And they're open all night. It's pretty laid-back atmosphere. So we went there, ordered all different kinds of stuff. I had breakfast food. My wife had a turkey burger, and my kids had chicken fingers. The other kids had hot dogs. There was all kinds of stuff. And what's impressive with diners, to me, at least most of them around this area, is their menu's about 12 pages long. And there's a million things to order on a diner menu, and somehow they stay in business. They kind of know how much food to have on hand. I mean, the food generally is pretty good. I really haven't had a bad meal at a diner. I mean, it's not going to be 5-star, so but it's good food. It's fresh, and I think it's amazing how they're able to calculate how much food they need for the night with a menu that is at least 10 pages long and small type for those menu items. So somehow they're able to do it, and I can't remember. I'm sure it's happened. I know it's happened at some restaurants before that I've been to where they're out of stuff, but it's rare. They almost always have what you want and enough of it. And if they were buying too much of it, they'd probably go out of business. So just kind of a miracle of the market that I can't imagine any central planner would be able to tell all the diners around, you need X number of eggs, X number of X amount of ground beef, the other million things on their menu, but somehow they figure it out, and they're able to have fresh food, good tasting food, no matter what you order. So just a miracle of the market.
I'm actually the guy that tells all the restaurants what and how much to buy.
Really?
Yeah.
So that,
Something not many people know about me.
so that was a made-up free market story.
It was. I'm sorry.
Wow. All right, so there you go. The benefits of central planning.
I
Just
have
have the right central planner.
I have perfect
Go all
knowledge.
in.
What can I say? It's a gift I was born with. Just always knew.
And the good thing is, if you ever get it wrong one day, you start losing your mind, we'll just vote for someone else.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, great.
So with that, show notes page is mcflugel.com/78. You'll find links to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and Stitcher and YouTube, as well as subscribe to our email newsletter, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. So, also we added a link to this kind of related article by Mance Rader on the Libertarian Institute. That's on the show notes page, so give that a read too. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Peace.